Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
WCW closed its doors on March 26, 2001, leaving some of the biggest wrestling stars in the world there for the taking. Main event talent that could have brought their millions of WCW fans with them to Vince McMahon's product. But while some found success in WWE, many more were treated like absolute jokes. I am Luke Owen, and these are 5 WCW wrestlers botched by WWE. Diamond Dallas Page was one of the few top guys who decided to take a huge pay cut from their guaranteed WCW contracts to work for the WWF. In WCW, DDP had been called the People's Champion, which was the same moniker The Rock had been given in the WWF. His pitch when he came in was to program a feud between the two, People's Champ versus People's Champ. WWF didn't like the idea, however, and instead Page was put into a program with The Undertaker where, in storyline, DDP had been stalking The Undertaker's wife. It was an angle that made no sense from the outset. Anyone who had watched WCW knew that DDP was married to Kimberly Page, so why would he start stalking The Undertaker's wife? The first pay-per-view appearance for Dallas was at King of the Ring 2001, where he challenged Taker to a fight. Taker eventually answered and then beat him up for 10 minutes with DDP getting no offense in. And that was the story of their entire feud. Undertaker would beat up DDP, and DDP didn't get to hit back. It was designed like that, like beat down the WCW guys. There was a lot of heat that was before us when we first came in there. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't Rey Mysterio one of the few guys to do better in WWE than in WCW? And you're right. Mysterio was seen as nothing more than a cruiserweight in WCW. But in WWE, he was a huge star who won various championships and had main event level feuds with the likes of Eddie Guerrero. It's hard to put into words how popular Rey was among the WWE audience in 2004 and 2005. He was a huge star with a lot of merchandise sales because his mask appealed to kids. He was seen as a real-life superhero, the little engine that could. When Eddie sadly passed away in 2005, Mysterio was put into a storyline where he would overcome all obstacles and finally win the World Heavyweight Championship on the biggest stage of them all. He achieved just that, beating Kurt Angle and Randy Orton at WrestleMania 22. But it was all downhill from there. Even in the lead up to Mania, Rey lost clean to Fit Finlay and Kurt Angle, and then got into a feud with JBL where he lost clean to Mark Henry, Kurt Angle again, and the Great Khali, drew with Kane, and was then beaten by Rob Van Dam. He then couldn't beat Sabu at One Night Stand, got laid out by Mark Henry, and only managed to beat Booker T because Chavo Guerrero interfered. He then lost to Booker T at the Great American Bash. He was never given a chance, not one single chance, and was without question the worst booked longer-term champion, meaning more than a few days, ever in the history of any major promotion. He may have been WCW's franchise player, but Sting's WWE career is nothing but a small and pointless footnote. After WCW closed its doors, more or less everyone who made a name in that company jumped ship eventually. But Sting didn't. Despite several attempts to sign him, Sting instead opted to work for Dixie Carter and TNA, where he held their championship several times in some really memorable feuds. He eventually left that company and was announced as the cover star for WWE 2K15. In 2014, the unthinkable finally happened as Sting made his WWE debut at the Survivor Series to take out Triple H and The Authority. This led to a match between the two at WrestleMania 31, which was put over as the culmination of WWE versus WCW on commentary. So, of course, Triple H won to remind everyone that WWE won the wrestling war and not WCW. Sting didn't even come out to his WCW music. Triple H is going over the match and he goes, okay, he'll break the sledgehammer, then I'll hit him with the sledgehammer and cover him 1, 2, 3. I looked at Hulk and Hulk looked at me and I was thinking, Sting, what kind of lawyer do you have, bro? You're coming in the door doing a job you weren't even guaranteed to go over? That's Vince just reminding you who won, even if he's gonna make money the other way. He later returned to the company to feud with Seth Rollins over the WWE Championship, but lost again at Night of Champions. But get this, Seth had already wrestled and lost that night to John Cena, and Cena also gave him an AA on the floor. So Sting comes in, fresh as a daisy, and still couldn't beat Rollins. Not only that, but Sting took a buckle bomb awkwardly and suffered a career-ending injury. His WWE run resulted in 2 matches, and he lost both looking like a chump. Let's be honest, the reason WCW picked up traction and popularity in the late 1990s was because of Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall as the New World Order. Their group was insanely popular, selling untold amounts of merchandise and creating a rabid fan base that genuinely preferred the NWO to WCW. So how could WWE mess that up when they brought them into the company in February 2002? The NWO made their debut at No Way Out as the poison to kill the company. However, they weren't a very effective poison, as they lost both of their WrestleMania matches to Steve Austin and The Rock. Following WrestleMania X8, Hogan left the group, and Hall and Nash began a feud with Ric Flair. Hall was soon fired from the company following the infamous plane ride from hell, and Nash injured himself, returned, and then injured himself again. The big end to the NWO invasion, Vince simply announced the group was disbanded. In just a few months of their debut, the NWO had fizzled out with no payoff. The biggest faction in WCW history, not named the Four Horsemen, a potential huge moneymaker, and they only lasted a couple of months. What a waste! While not everyone was keen, Goldberg's 2016 run in WWE against Brock Lesnar was far superior to his initial run in the company. One of the biggest stars in WCW, Goldberg's undefeated streak was legendary among wrestling fans, and his championship win against Hulk Hogan is still talked about to this day. So what would his WWE run in 2003 amount to? Goldberg being put in a gold wig. He feuded with Jericho while doing a watered-down version of his undefeated streak, which came crashing down when Triple H was the first man to pin him just a couple of months after his debut. Goldberg then feuded with Triple H and Evolution for the rest of the year, picking up the World Heavyweight Championship at Unforgiven before losing it 84 days later at Armageddon. He then entered into a feud with Brock Lesnar, resulting in one of the worst WrestleMania matches in history. It was a square peg in a round hole. I don't think from the beginning either of us gave it a fair shot. I had a predisposed idea of what I would encounter. Negativity, period, end of story. I always felt I was a football player at a frat party. What was the real reason Daniel Bryan was fired from WWE? And what are the worst things about the WWE brand split? Click those videos over there to find out more. Press subscribe and support WrestleTalk on Patreon. I have been Luke Owen, and that was a list.